Okay, so today I will be showing you how to write queries and all the features that come with writing queries on the QuranResearch.org website. So before we start writing queries, I would ask you to do several things. First of all, make sure you create an account and you sign in. You cannot create a query without signing in. You need to be signed in to create the query. And also, I'd ask you to go to the docs page, and in the docs page, I'd ask you to read the user manual and that database documentation. Now, in the user manual and database documentation, it tells you all of the tables that the Quran Research database has, and all the columns in it, and what and the data that all the columns hold. This will be really important when writing the queries, as you need to have a good knowledge of all of this when you are writing the queries, so you can actually navigate the database and navigate the Quran for all the research that you want to do. Okay, and so let's say you've read the documents page, you've signed in, now what do we do? I'd ask you to go to the profile page and go to new query. So as you can see, I've gone to new query, and it gives us this page that we have to fill out. This form, you can call it. And now the first thing you'd want to know is that there's a star next to title, there's a star next to description, and there's a star next to query. Now, what these three means, it means, hey, you have to fill these three in. The title, people have to know what your query is called. Description, people have to know what your query does. Query, you have to make a query if you want to run it. That's a no-brainer. A query is a no-brainer. Now, these three down here, we're going to get to later on. These are features of the website, like I talked about in the intro, and these will all build on top of one another. So at any point, just pause the video and get well versed with one of them before you move on to another one, because they all build on top of each other and they need a strong understanding if you want to use all the features that the QuranResearch.org website and database has to offer. Okay, let's make a basic query. Now, our description, what is our query going to do? We're just going to get, we are going to get all of the columns from the surah table. Okay, so I'm going to write a very basic query. So select all from surahs. So what it's saying, hey, select all the tables, select all the columns from the surah table. Exactly what my description said. Now, when I call this a basic query, I did not mean the query itself being basic. When I say a basic query, I mean we are not using a parameter, we're not using a detail query, and we're not using a hyperlink column. So the query inside can be very complex, but when I call it a basic query, it's just not using any of these three features. And so let's save this, and now let's run the query. Now, as you can see, it gets us all the rows and all the columns from the surah table. It starts from surah serial number 1, which is Surah Al-Fatiha, and it goes all the way down to Surah Al-Nas. So as we can see, it gets us all the rows and tables from the surah table. Exactly what our description said it would, and not exactly what the title is, but the title was just more for the people watching this video. Okay, so that is a basic query. Now let's do something a little bit more advanced. Let's make a query, but we're going to have a parameter. And a parameter is basically a placeholder saying, hey, information, a parameter says, hey, information is going to go to where I am. I just do not have the information yet, but it will be sent to you. And parameters on the Quran Research website is the user gets to actually input the information in the placeholder, which is really cool. It allows for lots of it allows for limitless possibilities, and the user themselves can actually interact with the query, which is really cool, and it allows for a lot. So let's name this query with parameter. And the description, we are going to let the user choose what surah information they want to look at. instead of them looking at the entire table, we're going to let them choose one row from the table. So now let's do select all from surahs, again from the surahs table. And this time we're doing where. So as we said, select all, it gets all the columns from the surah table, And now we're going to add a where. So where, it basically narrows down our search, right? It narrows it down to a single row in this case. So we're going to do where surah serial number. Again, surah serial number was this column. It was basically 1, 2, 3, 4, the serial number of the surah in the Quran, right? Is equal to at A. Now, what does at A mean? So we know what serial number is. It's the name of the column. So we're saying, hey, where surah serial number column is equal to blank. So what does this mean? So at, it basically means, hey, I'm a parameter. It's the sign for saying a parameter, and A is the name of the parameter. Now, when you're writing your own queries, we want to have a much more better name for the parameter, so people who are reading the query itself have a much better understanding of what the parameter actually is. And so let's do that. Let's do surah serial number. Now this might be a little bit confusing. Hey, you're calling this surah serial number, you're calling this surah serial number. But because of the at, it's saying, hey, this is just what the parameter is called, and this is the column that we are looking at. And so, as I said, remember, it is a placeholder for information. And so how the user is going to input that information, that's when we click on the first feature, which is view parameters. And so the parameter display name is basically, hey, what do we want the user to see when they're inputting the information? So obviously you want to have a good name. So surah serial number is a good name because it's saying, because this tells the user, hey, I want you to give me a surah serial number. So that's a good name. We can just call it surah serial number. And now we need the name of the parameter. We also called it surah serial number. And it's, as you can see, it says start with an at symbol, telling you that, hey, this is a parameter. Now, there are many different ways to get information from a user. Let's first look at text box, right? And it's saying, hey, the text box is, it's going to take alphanumeric data in or numeric data in. And then we want the default value. So what value is going to be inside the text box if nothing else is in it? Let's just do 1. Because we're talking about surah serial numbers, so 1 is just going to default to Surah Al-Fatiha. So let's add the parameter, let's save the query, and let's run the query. So as we can see, this is the name that we called it, that we gave it back there, the display name, and it default to 1. And as you can see, it's a text box. So let's do 2. So now we're going to get all the information from Surah Al-Baqarah. And now we get all the information from Al-Baqarah. Surah serial number is 2. Let's say we want to do Surah Al-Falaq. So we enter 113. And hey, we get the information 113. Exactly what our description said it would be. We are going to let the user choose what surah information they want to look at. And that was only one type of input method. There are many other types of input methods. There's a surah drop-down list. And once we have a surah drop-down list, we don't have the extra options like what's the default value. Let's update the parameter because we changed what is inside of it. Let's save the query, and let's run it. And now, instead of having a text box in which we input a number, now we just have a list of all of the surahs. And so let's, for example, do Surah An-Nas, right? It's just a drop-down list of all the surah names. And if we reset it, it goes to all. Basically saying, hey, all the surahs are here, choose one, and yeah, so that's what it is. That's a different type of input method. Another type, we can have a sliding bar, and so we want the minimum value to be 1 because the first surah is obviously Surah Al-Fatiha, and then we want the max value to be 114. We want the default value to be 1. So if we update the parameter, if we save and if we run, now we can see we have a sliding bar where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 114. Minimum value 1. There. Let's say you read Surah Al-63 and you want to go back to Surah Al-Fatiha. You just click reset. Bam, 1. Because that's what we said the default value is. You can also input it from here, and the sliding bar will go to there. So many different ways to input information via parameter, and it's very easy, very intuitive to the user. But then it also allows you to write a broad query, but then for people to get very precise information from it, which is amazing. And so this parameter allows us to do lots of stuff. Now, we talked about parameters. Now let's do a hyperlink column. What a hyperlink column does is basically saying, hey, I want a certain column to now have a link. And the user gets to click on this link and they get to navigate to a place in the Quran, which is really cool. So let's name this query with hyperlink column. And what is this going to do? So we are going to allow the user to choose and navigate to the surah they want to using the surah name. Okay, so we said that. Now that sounds a little complicated, but thankfully, thanks to the website and the features of the website, it's not that complicated. So we're going to do select all from surahs. And that's the entire query. That's it. Very simple query. But once we go down here to another feature of the website, hyperlink columns, we click on this. Now another similar pop-up appears as we did to parameters. And let's see what it does. So hyperlink info type. So remember, we want to navigate to the surah. So the information that we want a surah serial number, because that is how the website knows to navigate to that surah. And now the backing column name, surah serial number, targeted name, surah name. What does this mean? Backing column name and targeted column name. Well, let's first run the query and then let me explain. So let's add the hyperlink column, let's save, and let's run. So as we can see, we have the regular query, right? But if we go to the surah name, we can notice that's highlighted. It's a link. If we click on it, now that column is highlighted and we actually navigate to Surah Al-An'am exactly like the description said we would, right? We're going to navigate to it using the surah name. Now, when we said backing column name, what this means is the hyperlink column is asking, hey, where am I going to get the information from to actually navigate? So how do I know that I need to go to Surah Al-An'am? And we said, hey, we are going to use the surah serial number to get there. So that's why we put surah serial number in the backing column name. Now, targeted column name, it's saying, hey, I'm getting the information from surah serial number, but how do I want to actually get there? And the easiest way to get there is by actually clicking on the surah name. So Surah An-Nas, we read Surah An-Nas. Oh, I want to go there. We just click on the name of the surah and we go there. So that is what the targeted column name. Backing column name, where you get the information from. Targeted column name is what you actually click on. And so as we can see, with parameters, it allows the user to input stuff, and hyperlink columns allows them to click stuff, allows them to be parameters and hyperlink columns. It allows the user to be a lot more connected with the query and allows for a lot more customization with the query. With a very simple query like just selecting all from surahs, now allows us to actually navigate to that page using the hyperlink column. And so these are all really powerful tools that we can use to actually navigate the Quran. Now the final one that we're going to do, we're going to use a detail query. So we're going to name this query and detail query. Now, what is a detail query? Now, if you are well-versed in SQL, like you probably should be if you're writing queries, a detail query is basically a subquery. And so first, let's find out what this example query will do. So this query will allow the user to click on a surah name, navigate to that surah, and see all of the ayah information in that surah. Now, this sounds very complicated, right? But thanks to parameters and thanks to hyperlink columns and thanks to the detail query, this can all be done, right? Now remember, hyperlink column, it was a link and we were able to navigate to that place, and parameters allowed a placeholder information to be there and for us to actually input that information. So first, let's write the query. Now the query is very simple again. It's select all. It is select all from surahs. And this is the entire query, the very basic one. Let's save it. Now, we're not actually going to click on the parameter function, but we will be using it, and we're going to get there in the detail query. Now, in the detail query. So now, let's write a detail query. What is this detail query? Well, we said, hey, we're going to select all from surahs, and we said we're going to let them click on a surah names, just like the hyperlink column that we did in the previous query. But we also said we're going to allow them to see all the ayahs in that surah. So, now we're going to have to use a different table from the database. Select all from ayahs. We're going to have to use the ayahs table where surah serial number is equal to at surah serial number. Now, remember, if we went back to our parameter query, we said, hey, select all from surahs where surah serial number is equal to surah serial number. So actually, in the ayahs table, it also has a surah serial number column. And so we're saying, hey, we want to see all the ayahs in the surah where placeholder. So where the surah serial number 114. So if this was 114, it would show all of the information of Surah An-Nas, for example. So that is the detail query. And now let's make the hyperlink column. So hyperlink column is going to be subquery, right? Because the subquery is what we're navigating to, right? The backend column name is going to be the surah serial number. The targeted name is going to be surah name. Let's add this hyperlink column. Let's save this query, and let's see what it does. Now, as we can see, it has all the surahs. It brought up the surah table. It has the hyperlink column. But now if we click on it, like Surah Al-An'am, wow, now it shows us all the ayahs from Surah Al-An'am, just like our detail query said it would, right? So it used a parameter. It's saying, hey, I don't know what the surah serial number is, but the hyperlink column, right? Because we said hyperlink column, it's a subquery. So hyperlink column is giving the information to the detail query. And so if we go back here, we can click on like Surah Al-Baqarah, right? And it gives us all the ayahs in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? And then the main query, right? Select all from surahs. It just allows us to navigate to the subquery. And they're both displayed over here. So, yeah, that was all the features of the Quran research.org website. I made very easy queries and examples using detailed queries, hyperlink columns, and parameters. But with these three tools, you can really make many complicated queries, and they can all be user interactive, which allows the user, the person doing the research, to get whatever information they want, and it allows them to see if what they're looking at is correct or not. And so these tools are all very powerful, right? And using the database and using the tool that we have here. So that's it for this video. That was a rundown on how to make queries, parameters, hyperlink columns, and detailed queries all on the Quran Research website. Hopefully you start writing some interesting queries. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.